not large enough that it makes sense for OpenAI to go like into a niche. The problem gets materially larger and trickier the earliest stage you go. You're considering selling 10, 15% of your company for a large amount of money to someone. That was very much the problem we wanted to solve. This is my exact profile I'm looking for. What you invest in is people. You don't always have to take VC money, although it oftentimes is the right choice.
Now it's game time.
That's the only way you make a billion-dollar business in no time. It's the only way to materially increase your market, right?
There is a huge dependency.
You might as well go after like a market that's worth $1 billion or $2 billion or $3 billion. After we can make a very attractive business, the moment you have anything, ship it. There are going to be so many people who are going to be so screwed.
The pressure to at some point be profitable will become reality.
Yeah.
And then at some point the easiest way to do it is just
increase prices. It is so difficult to build yourself. I don't really understand the purpose of building in stealth.
I've been waiting to ask this question for half an hour. Welcome everyone to our 5th episode of VentureTales. And today we have with us Jacob from Evertrace, best friend of the new VC era, let's say. Welcome, Jacob.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here.
So just as an introduction, of course, for the people who don't know you and that are not in a VC space, if you can tell us a few words about you.
Before I started Evertrace, along with Simon here, a little bit more than 1.5 years ago, I worked at a venture fund, a Danish venture fund called Pre-Seed Ventures, where I was helping them exit in all the portfolio companies. So like Carta, Vivino, GoMore, etc. Then before that, I have a longer career in consulting, worked for Bain for 5 years, primarily focusing on like their private equity space, and then short stint in investment banking, working as an engineer, et cetera, and then academic background in engineering and economics. So that, which is pretty much all of this ties together in why we decided to build Evertrace, right? So Simon, my co-founder, is also from Pre-Seed Ventures, which is where we met.
It is interesting because we see a person who was into VC coming in to try to solve some of the potential challenges that VCs face. And now I want to come into the industry because I had a quick look. And I see that it's a rapidly growing industry, VC research, data platforms, etc. Did you know this or did you research it before you started your company, or was it just out of your own observations?
I mean, it's a very good question, actually. And it ties into another point, which I'm happy to delve a little bit deeper on. So I think we more came from it that we thought there was a problem, or like at least there was like a niche that wasn't fully fixed, so to speak, right? There are obviously a little bit bigger players out there like PitchBook, Dealroom, etc., who provides quite good data on investment rounds, like a little bit further up the funnel, so to speak. But we just felt like the early stage, we worked at Pre-Seed Ventures. You can probably guess from the name what stage they invested in. But we felt like that early stage was a little bit underserved. So like we just more felt like there was a niche and a hole that we could kind of jump into, which is the original genesis for it. In terms of market, we actually knew that the market grows quite rapidly, but it's still relatively small, right? It's not like you're developing the next cancer drug, which if it turns into a blockbuster, you'll make $1 billion business quite easily. So it ends up being quite a small market.
Yes.
But we're actually fine with that because that ties into kind of how we wanted to run the business. So we very purposefully in the beginning decided not to take on VC funding. And so we raised a few smaller rounds, but mostly from angels. So like High-Intentionality angels from the Nordics, Bjarke Stauon, Christian Jansen, and a few others. But we didn't feel like this space kind of suited itself for like a traditional VC journey, which is extremely good for specific types of companies and specific industries, but is a lot less suited for like industries that has like a smaller total market, right? So we kind of knew that it was a good space to be in. It grows quite rapidly. But at the same time, also was like fully aware that this is just like a hard business to make an actual unicorn. Although you can make a very, very attractive business out of it, which is what we're currently doing, right?
So this covers the why. And now for the people who don't know, if you would have need to pitch them now, what exactly is Evertrace? What are you doing?
A large portion of what early stage venture funds do is that they source new investments, right? They basically go out and identify who can I invest in, right? That's very easy if you just want to invest in public equities, because you go on a stock exchange, it's like you have a list of this is the stuff I can invest in. If you are a VC fund, that becomes a lot harder. If you're a later stage fund, it's a little bit easier, because then you can go in and say, I want to see everyone who's raised an A round or a B round or whatever. And then it's like, I'll take those and then I'll start, and like, I'll probably invest in one of those next. The problem gets materially larger and trickier the earliest stage you go, right? So if you go all the way to pre-seed, you're essentially looking for something that didn't exist and now does, and there are very few breadcrumbs on it, right? So you're looking for the classic 0 to 1, right? And that was very much the problem we wanted to solve. And that's also in pre-seed, there are a few things that matters a lot. One of them is kind of like speed of execution. And then two is kind of getting access to the right deal flow, but making sure that the right deal flow doesn't have a ton of noise in it, because the potential is just to look at so many companies. So basically what we do with that in mind is we solve this problem for them. We look at all the trade registries across Europe, starting also in the US, like who is incorporating new companies. Are these interesting people? Have they been founders before? Have they worked at startups? Do they have interesting backgrounds? And then that's the first piece. And then the second piece is the company that you're founding. Is that actually also relevant for VC fund, right? So if you're founding a consulting business, probably not relevant for VC fund, even though it could be a good business. But if you're funding the next deep tech, healthcare, whatever, very likely at least a VC fund want to look at it, right? So that's what we do. We basically serve this up in a feed. And then because we want to keep the finger on the pulse, we do this on a continuous basis, right? So most of our clients, they'll log in once or twice a day, every morning, just get like 5, 10, 20 new leads, evaluate them, push them on their CRM.
I've seen online that you compile around 100,000 data points. That's pretty enormous. And I was thinking from, let's say I'm a client, how does it look from my side? So I set up some filters, some preferences, and based on those, your algorithm takes care of it and sends me the notifications, right?
Pretty much, actually. So you'll set up essentially like a long list of kind of like, these are the type of people I'm looking for, where you have ability to go quite deep. And we're developing a few tools that hopefully launch Q1 next year, where you're really going to be able to say like, this is my exact profile I'm looking for. But already you can go very deep on industries, background, what have they done before, who am I looking for, geographies, nationalities. We see a lot of like, for example, Nordic funds that invest in the Nordics, but also in people from the Nordics, but outside, right? Stuff like that are things that you're able to kind of like find on our platform. And then you get a super curated feed where it doesn't overwhelm you with tons of noise, but still gives you enough deal flow to kind of keep going.
Yeah, especially now we see also the trend of a lot of more micro VCs and angel syndicates who are who have very specific parameters, let's say, either if geographical or niche wise. So I think it's a great solution to have, this filtering system.
Yeah.
I've seen in your actual website, you say founder detection and not company or new startup. And I think it's very interesting because I think it gives me a sight into your own thought process as an investor before. So first you're looking for the person and then you go deeper, which is very interesting, putting it, on your landing page and saying, people matter first and then the product itself.
It's actually a very good point, and something we've kind of gone back and forth on, because there's two ways of essentially approaching the problem, right? You can either go out and you can look for companies and say like, company A was founded by these two people. And it's like, if you want to get in contact with company A, go talk to these two people. Or you can go the other approach, which is that person A has founded something. And because of person A's background and what he has founded, he's relevant, go talk to him. So, I mean, the distinction is small and the end result is a little bit more about packaging, but it ends up being quite material also in the way we build our data pipeline. So everything we do is people first. And that's probably because we come from like an early stage fund where like everyone knows that like what you invest in is people. I mean, the idea cannot be completely off the mark and it has to kind of like have some venture swing, so to speak, but it needs to be the people. I mean, the people are going to be building the business. Those are the ones you need to believe in, right? You're going to believe that they build a unicorn.
Your company is less than 2 years old. And you have more than 120 funds already onboarded.
Yeah.
And I want to discuss a bit, was this primarily driven by references and word of mouth, or do you have an actual go-to market where you will reach out to funds, etc.?
I think so. We were very intentional about how we did our go-to-market. So we actually started. We're both from Denmark. We operate out of Copenhagen, right? We have quite strong networks in Denmark. So we started covering Denmark. We actually didn't cover anything else. So we're niche in general, but we're like even more niche, right? So it's just
Let's conquer first this
Exactly.
region.
Like that was literally the point, right? Let's just go all in on Denmark and then make sure that everyone knows us there and essentially everyone uses us. And I think we're approaching like 100% market share in Denmark. And then it's just like, okay, fine, Denmark, then you kind of just expand outwards, then the Nordics, then you go Germany, then you go UK, etc. And that it leads to several nice points, which is one, you get going. Because in this game, it's quite hard to get the first couple of customers. But then once Fund A sees that Atomico uses it, or Crandom or something like that, then all of a sudden it quite easily becomes much easier to convince the internal stakeholders, like, these guys are also using it. They're a great fund. We know them from the 10 other things, right? So we built social proof, so to speak. And that enables us to do two things. One, enables us to do our own go-to-market, which is like, I mean, we do some Google ads and some stuff like that. It also enables us to do our LinkedIn outreach. So, I mean, we post a ton of articles, we post a ton of analyses and stuff like that. We collaborate with different news outlets to post stuff on LinkedIn because our audience is quite heavily on LinkedIn. And then lastly, because you have social proof, you have a good product, then it also enables you to do references. And now it's probably half that comes from references, which is a really good sign for us because it just like means that essentially it's like a virus, right? The more we sell it to, kind of like the more we're going to sell to in the future.
Yeah, this speaks to the quality of the product as well.
Exactly. It's a lot. It actually is a lot more. You can sell with a lot more ease in your stomach because if people reference something or refer you, then they're not going to churn, right? They're not going to like use this product. I hate it, but please go ahead and use it anyway. It ends up being, you don't need like a massive sales organization behind you just to sustain your numbers, right? Because there's like, yeah, sure, you grow by 30% a month, but at the end of the day, you still have like 20% churn. So that helps a lot in the way we approach things.
You mentioned, the first clients.
Yeah.
How did it feel when you onboarded this first one? Was it like a sign of relief, or was it the moment where you say, okay, now it's game time, let's go?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And actually, the first clients we knew of, but we didn't actually, we weren't like intimately friendly, at least not both of us. So like the first client, first of all, we got the first client after like a month or something. And it was a lot of hand holding. We were literally like, everything was checked manually, just to make sure that they got like the white glove experience. But it was quite fun to have made something. Like, you start from nothing and then you make something and then people actually pay for it. And it was, because we never wanted to be VC backed, right? So we know that our budget, so to speak, was reasonably limited. We actually on purpose charged quite early. So it's not like one of those where we can afford to give like 6 months of partnership where we get zero revenue, because at a certain point we're just going to run out of cash simply. So it was very nice to kind of like, fine, like we've built something, some people at least are willing to pay for it, which means that there's a reasonable chance more people are willing to pay for it.
It's clear from our conversation so far, you're operating very lean.
Yes.
So
on purpose.
Yes, on purpose. How large is your team right now?
So we are 3 guys. We hired a CTO who's also a co-founder now, Jacob. We hired him 8 months ago. Like amazing hire. He's super, super good. Really, really talented. And then actually a year ago, we hired a founder's associate as well, Harvey, also super great guy. And so we are 3 people, but then we have a half-time employee as well.
And you mentioned clearly that it was your choice to go lean and without a lot of VC funding, but what was the reasoning behind it? Did you want the agility and flexibility to move fast and not have someone, holding you back maybe, because sometimes it happens?
It's one of those things. I think one of the most important, as a new startup, I think one of the most important decisions you make is decide how you want to fund the journey. And the primary reason for that is because once you decide on how to fund it, you set up like milestones, or you set up like, these are the guardrails within which I'm going to operate my company. If you decide to go for a VC journey, which is great for a lot of companies, like a lot of companies can't be built without a VC journey. Like Uber doesn't exist if it's not funded, right? But you also set yourself up for like growth, like with a capital G. Like, I mean, people invest in you and they expect a return and they expect you to take choices that lead you down a specific path. They're all right taking choices that are massively risky as long as it materially increases the potential upside, which makes sense, right? Because that's the only way you make $1 billion business in no time, right? I mean, look at Lovable, for
First you
example.
need to burn $500 million to make
Exactly.
one. Yeah.
So I mean, you need to invest in like companies that are. It's okay if it goes bust because we have that in our model, right? So I'm much more willing to, as a VC fund, I'm much more willing to invest in companies that might go bust as long as there's also a reasonable chance that they become massive. So knowing this, we both worked in a VC fund, so we're intimately familiar with this, right? It's quite important that you build a business that has this capability. So we pretty much from the beginning is like, okay, fine, how big can this actually be? How big is our market? How much does it grow? Can we build, like, are there adjacent markets like very close to? So we can actually make a company that is so sizable where our VC like investors would get a return that's material. You pretty quickly get to like a consideration where it's like, that's probably going to be hard. So then if you take VC money, you'll probably be pushed for good reasons into making decisions that are extremely risky because it's just like, it's the only way to materially increase your market, right? And it's just, we would much rather stay lean, build a very like highly growing, large company, but one where we have more control and where we can kind of steer the direction. And that direction doesn't have to be that the company ends up being worth $1 billion. So that's, we basically decided this like even before we incorporated the company.
And is this focused on the initial phase of the company, or if it's possible for you, you want to continue being the same way?
I mean, we are more than profitable now, so we have reached break even already, and grows like we've 5x'd our revenue in the last 9 months, 10 months maybe. So we are growing very fast. So for the next, like in terms of like 5x'ing our revenue again, do we need to move into adjacencies? Do we move into new niches? And then if we do that, does that require funding? And it is a consideration that we continuously make. So it's like maybe it's something we want to do, but there's still a consideration like, does this niche then add off enough kind of market potential where this then becomes a potential massive business? And right now the consideration is it probably wouldn't be. It would add, so we could probably scale this to like 5-10 million euro ARR, but scaling it a lot beyond that still becomes hard just because of the nature of the industry you're in. I mean, the only way to make this an actual unicorn would essentially be to move beyond VC and then just double down on private equity because that's where the money is, right? I mean, the AUM there is just 10, 20 times larger.
And I guess now with AI being incorporated into operations and everything,
Yes.
It's way easier to stay lean, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our company literally doesn't exist without the models that are available. I mean,
actually, this is something I have asked so far to every person that came on. We live in an interesting era where we see all the startups utilizing AI infrastructure. So at the same time, it is one of their key drivers, but maybe also the biggest risk potentially. So because even if we like it or not, there is a huge dependency because there are 5 companies making the infrastructure and 1 billion of others taking advantage of it. Of course, you build on the infrastructure, but you understand what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
So how much of a consideration is it for you? So apart from the standard competitors, the Harmonics, the Spectres, etc., do you consider maybe the actual OpenAIs or Anthropic building something similar? Or even now, I think someone could go in and search some things. Of course, it's more manual. Yeah. But do you think that it's an actual threat in the next like 5 years, or they wouldn't even bother?
I mean, that actually comes back to one of the reasons I like operating in a niche. I mean, operating in a niche means that, well, the market is not that massive, but also it's not...
But it's big enough for you.
Exactly. It's large enough that we can make a very attractive business, but it's not large enough that it makes sense for OpenAI to go like into a niche, which is VC, and then into a niche within VC, which is early stage VC. So you have like a natural moat just by kind of the industry itself. So I think that's number one. And then number two is that we use AI for a lot of like inference, right? So I mean, basically, at the end of the day, what we do is like we ask it a lot of questions, right? So it's like, is this company within this industry? Is this company attractive from this perspective? And so on and so forth. But you still have to have the underlying data pipelines. So in order for a company like OpenAI or Anthropic or whatever to go into this space, they'd have to build out underlying data pipelines, which is just, I mean, could they do it? I have no doubt that they could. I mean, they're very smart guys.
But maybe it's not important enough.
Exactly. It's just... I mean, you take something, you might as well go after like a market that's worth $1 billion or $2 billion or $3 billion instead of going after something that's super niche within another niche, right? I think there'll always be competition, right? There'll always be new players in the market. However, I would be very surprised if those players end to be the service providers.
But how much of a risk do you see from a pricing perspective? Because they have massive control over costs.
Yes.
So right now, the way you are structured, do you think that the margins allow you to be price pushed to a certain point?
Yeah. If they go out tomorrow and they increase the prices by like 20x, we will have a problem.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, we will have like an actual problem, right? But if they go out tomorrow and they 2x our prices, we'll be fine. I mean, it's a cost consideration, right? But it's one of many. So I don't think there is, like, at least from a cost perspective, I'm okay with that. I don't think that's where like the majority of our risk lies. Also because worst case scenario, like one, we have trained our own models and we can go back to that if worst comes to worst. It's a lot more problematic, right? Because you have to rent your own GPUs, etc. Or you could go out and you could take something like DeepSeek and then just train it on your corpus of data. So there are like alternatives out there in case something like catastrophic happens, right? Where like the prices literally just explode. But I see that at that point, like we'd be collateral damage. There are going to be so many people who are going to be so screwed.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm thinking about this a lot. And I think it's a matter of time to happen because you see all these companies, the infrastructure companies, with the amount of cash they're getting and with the amount of publicity, the pressure to at some point be profitable will become reality.
Yeah.
And then at some point, the easiest way to do it is just
increase prices.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I understand what you mean. That's
I mean,
it's an
agree with
oligopoly, but it's not a monopoly at the end of the day.
exactly right. And I mean, back in the days, VC funds essentially funded the Uber riders of everyone around the world because Uber ride was like subsidized basically. And we are seeing something similar happen here, right? But I mean, I think it's a lot more problematic if you are a straight rapper. So like, for example, if you ask, like if I'm a middleman and you ask me a question, I essentially ask the model.
If you're just a landing page. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Where you just like a pass through and then share your pass through with like a few enhancements. But then which is like 50% of my cost is the models, right? Obviously, if the cost go up by 20% or like 2x, then all of a sudden you have zero profit. However, for us, we have a lot more leeway here, which is helpful.
So now I've been waiting to ask this question for half an hour.
Yeah, sure.
We've been talking about lean and you have done 3 acquisitions in 2 months.
Yeah.
Talk to me about this. Tell me all the sauce behind the story.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So, I mean, I think it's also probably due to our background, right? We come from investment. We have worked with investment. I also worked as investment bankers. It's just kind of like you come into the space like, why don't everyone does this? So there's just like some natural kind of bias towards it, I suppose. However, we do have a few things that just means the space is just like naturally suitable for like a roll up. The first of all is that, I mean, software is great because the gross margins are massive. And the companies we're buying right now are essentially providing the same product, a little bit different packaging than we are. Which means that we could take their customers and then we just roll them onto our platform. And then we'll naturally also take whatever tech they have, we'll integrate in ours, the data sources, we'll integrate in ours. But at the end of the day, you can just take their customers and roll them onto our platform. Given that gross profit in software is just so high, also means that we're able to structure the deal in a very attractive way. So all of a sudden, you don't just have cash and equity and loan, which turns into cash, but you also have like an actual earn-out model. So you can go out and then you can like, okay, fine, a percentage of everything we make on your customers, you'll get back on top of naturally cash and equity and stuff like that, right? And so there's some elements that leads itself very well to like consolidating because there's just so good economies of scale here. And then because of this, there's just like some financing opportunities that you can get, which is just straight up great, right? And then there's like some tech opportunities you can just plug into.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I've seen they were very strategic because each one brought, apart from, the customer base, a unique differentiator. Maybe it's, registers in Germany or data infrastructure.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was very much on purpose. So you buy customers and you buy some tech and then you also buy like just some market power, which is just great because like you consolidate everyone into the same platform. Customers get a better product because they basically get the combined version at the same price. And you get a much more like a better product, which means lower churn, but it also means more customers on it. So that's why like it makes sense to do. And then we're also lucky because this space, because it's a niche, right? We don't have massive companies. So we're buying companies that are like between 2 and I think the other one was like between 2 and 10-ish people.
How challenging is the integration of a company at your stage? Because you are still a very young company.
Yep.
So I guess there are a lot of processes or infrastructure that is still immature and you're building it. So does it create more complexities integrating these new platforms?
I mean, and that is one of the critical things here. So when you integrate two massive companies, right, you basically have to like fit everything together, which is problematic. Or like it's not problematic, but it's difficult. It's just really, really hard. However, here it becomes a lot easier because we sell the same product. So like whether you have a website with logo A and a website with logo B, it's like, okay, fine. It looks a little bit different, but I understand what I'm buying, and it's just like I have to get used to a new interface. So we don't have to go out and have like their platform running and our platform running side by side and then integrate them. So essentially we roll everyone onto our platform, and then at the back end we just make sure that everything that was shown on their platform is then piped into our platform. So then there are some tech issues or some tech stuff that needs to be integrated, which is fine, but it's not even that like a lot. But on the front end wise, we don't need to keep multiple things running. And that's why like the integration piece is just so much easier compared to, let's say that right now we're not founder detection, but if we wanted to go out and buy someone that served investment data, it's something we're considering as well. But at that point, you basically need to build a new product in order to integrate their product on top of yours. Or you need to take their entire stack and then keep that one alive. But then you start running into territory where like integration is a much more of a concern, and it takes a longer time, much more risks. There are more risks that you do something that their customers doesn't like, etc. You know all your customers, you know their needs. It's just different platforms.
From a service perspective, I have the idea of someone who is outside of the space, but if there is a relatively big VC fund, they would have 2 or 3 different platforms. So maybe they have Evertrace, maybe they have X or Y. Is this a good thing for you talking to them, or is it a risk? Because my assumption is that now, because it's quite a emerging topic, they might integrate to their tech stack 3 different platforms and then 2 years say, okay, let's keep this one. So do you see it now as a good opportunity that they use a lot of tools, or a risk?
I actually have quite a few customers who dual source. The tendency will be that they use us for early stage. So like they use us for their pre-seed team, or like to get in contact with founders early, and then they'll use another one for a little bit later, right? Because they want to get company data when there's actually stuff that is relevant for that platform. Those things, like, to be honest, I mean, what I would do if I were a VC fund, I would probably just buy all the providers, and then I would integrate it into one pipeline, and I would just see where the most of my leads come from. And then if like you have 3 providers or 2 providers and one is 95, the other one is 5, yes, pick out the 5, right? But if one of them is like 50 or 60 and the other one is 40, it's like, sure, like I'll take the unique pieces of each pipeline, and then I'll feed them into my system.
Meet Evertrace, the most advanced radar for detecting tomorrow's founders today. In early stage investing, timing is everything. But finding new founders before the world does, that's the real challenge. With Evertrace, detect signals like new legal entities, social media updates, GitHub repos, research papers, patent filings, domain registrations, and much, much more. All in real time. Evertrace connects the dots and sends alerts in real time via Slack, email, or directly into your workflow. See something interesting? Add it to your CRM in one click. Reach out instantly on social media or via email. Want to go further? Build outreach sequences and let Evertrace run the follow-ups, personalized and on autopilot. Work as a team? Go multiplayer, share leads, track progress, and collaborate across the funnel, all in one place. Top funds around the world trust Evertrace, because in venture, being early is everything. And with Evertrace, you're always early. Book a demo today to experience unmatched coverage right at your fingertips.
So your early stage positioning is kind of a shield or a competitive advantage that allows them, to keep you integrated, which makes sense.
Exactly, right. So I think a lot of it's quite funny, but like a lot of our competitive advantage, I think, comes back to we've been in the shoes of our customers. We know what they want, we know their needs, we know what to build, we're building it, we built it before. But it also comes from the fact that it's a niche area, which means that there are few funds, like few companies who are going to go in and do exactly what we do. We can survive and thrive, but it would have been like 10 of us. It would have been a struggle. People keep saying it's like it's a niche, but I keep coming back to the fact that I love, like, if I'm going to build a business again, I'm building in a niche for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a growing niche though.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, so
no, I mean, it's a growing niche, and it's also like it's quite funny because like it's actually larger than we initially anticipated, which is quite funny. So both of us used to work in venture in Denmark, and there are funds in Denmark that we didn't know about who are now our customers. There's this way more smaller funds out there than I actually knew about.
Yeah. And the emergence of angel syndicates and angel investors in general.
Exactly, right. And there's also like highly specialized where it's, so for example, if you're a deep tech investor, like you care a lot about like who gets patents, who gets grants, research papers, stuff like that, right? And it is so difficult to build yourself. Like you either need like 1 or 2 full-time engineers, or you just need to rely on like talking with universities. And it very quickly ends up being sporadic, right? So it's like I hope to hit the next big company, but I have no idea when or if I'm going to hit it.
So you aggregate information from so many sources. I'm curious, which one surprised you more from how effective it is to predict, upcoming founders or new startups? Because I've seen you scan from corporate registers up to product hunt or different types of sources.
Yeah.
So was it something that really surprised you?
In the beginning, it was just, we're just going to do like social media, like Twitter and GitHub. And I thought that was enough. But then my co-founder, Simon, he was like very pushy on also getting the trade registries in. And I think that's really where value is, because that is, I mean, it's quite obvious. Everyone who has a company has to register somewhere. So, I mean, all companies exist there. So it's quite obvious that there's a lot of data that's untapped there. But I think the main point there is that sometimes they'll announce it before they register. But a lot of time people are registering a company before anything else. And we did this, right? I mean, we registered a company long before like we announced it. So I think there is value in becoming super early on that area. And then you get tons of like relevant stuff. And then the secondary piece is that it's data that's basically impossible to get. Because, I mean, it's not impossible to get, it's obviously out there, but it's very hard. It's very much not readily available. So you can't just go in and it's like, give me all the new healthcare companies, like in the Danish CVR. So I think that's probably where one of the biggest edges is the trade registry. And then we integrate across Europe with all the trade regs and starting in the US now as well.
So whoever thinks is building in stealth, they don't.
Yeah.
Evertrace knows about you.
Yeah. I mean, it is a little stalkerish sometimes. It's like, how did you know about this, right? But I mean, it's one of those things, like, it's quite funny, like how many things it's like, it's publicly, I mean, if you register, it's just publicly out there.
Yeah. What is your general opinion about building stealth rather than coming out and try to share, the whole journey building in public? We have this debate on LinkedIn now, team stealth, team building in public.
I think it's quite funny because like we weren't building in stealth, right? We just went out, announced it immediately. I don't really understand the purpose of building in stealth, because it's just, I mean, people know you're building something. You might as well tell them what you're building.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, exactly, right. I get it a lot more if you have not because you have nothing to show, but more because like it's so not ready. Like if you're a deep tech startup or something. But like I'm very much a fan of the moment you have anything, ship it. We like literally three weeks after we started like onboarding customers, just because like, yes, was the product terrible? Absolutely. It was awful. And like looking back, I was like, I have no idea why anyone used it. But it gives you invaluable feedback, right? It's like, I don't like this. They find bugs. So it's like, it's much more easy to iterate, so to speak, whenever you have it in the hands of someone who's not yourself. So that's also my point about building in stealth. Is just, I get it. For some, it can be a little bit daunting to kind of go out with it, but I would definitely just like, whenever you can, just ship it and just get it in front of people.
With so much data that you have in hand, apart from AI, what is the industry that you see now getting a lot of growth and traction that maybe is under the radar in the public eye?
First of all, AI is like fiddled into everything. Like it's hilarious. Like, I mean, almost not all, but like a large percentage of the companies we evaluate like have the AI tag, because it's like, I'm building in healthcare with an AI agent. Great. There's also AI. I'm building a deep tech with that, whatever. I think natural sciences, like the deep tech stuff, I think that's getting a push. There's a lot of grants, there's a lot of funding going into it. Personally, I also think that's a super interesting space. And obviously deep tech is like massive, right? But space tech is super up there. Defense tech is. So I think those which are a little bit more technical in nature are seeing kind of like a massive resurgence. I think at least from my perspective, I think where the biggest opportunity lie is probably healthcare. I know that historically VC funds operating in healthcare have been not performing well, and like healthcare VC funds have trouble raising.
It burns a lot of cash.
Yes. I mean, it burns a lot of cash. You run into regulation, etc. It feels like it's one of those areas. There's just like everything. I mean, if I go down and I buy a TV, right? I can buy like a TV for like 1/10 the price. That's much better than I did like 20 years ago. But healthcare is just like materially increasing cost year over year, right? So
and it either works or it doesn't. There's no, middle ground. So
no, and like you have to interact with like hospitals, which are great. I mean, half my family's doctors, but it's just like they're heavy to dance with, as we would say in Denmark. So I think it's a hard space to build in. I know like Tandem Health are doing very well as far as I understand. So there are some people who built in it, but I do think that's a massive opportunity in the future if we get the regulation right, and on top of it also being one of the most potentially impactful avenues, right?
You have a very specialized platform for VCs or investors that does a lot of the legwork, as you mentioned.
Yep.
Right now, it works as a tool. Do you see it in 2-3 years, maybe replacing a junior analyst? Or
yeah, that is the question, right? There's like the natural, one of our investors was like, yeah, the next thing you're going to build is like, you're going to build a virtual analyst, right?
Yeah, we don't need 3 interns. We just have Evertrace and it does everything.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think where we will go is like, we'll take away as much of the manual, boring, quote unquote, labor as possible, right? Like, for example, reaching out to founder, like finding people, reaching out to them, responding, setting up calls. That entire process is just like, you might as well just integrate all of it, right? Because like no one likes to do it, etc. Taking the next step of like, I mean, the natural next step is then also taking the first meeting. I think that one is just, it is hard. Like, and it's hard for multiple reasons. One, you have to find someone who's as good as a VC analyst. I mean, that in and of itself is a hard problem to solve. And the secondary piece is also like, if I'm a founder, I want to talk to a person, right? I don't want to talk to like at least right now, like in 3 years it might change, right? But like I would much prefer talking with like an actual person than like just get some chat, like glorified chatbot, right? So I think you have something, it's a little bit about skating where the puck is going. So in the future, that's kind of where the industry is moving. At the end of the day, probably is the industry and like population at large ready to talk with like a virtual person at the first meeting. I think that's going to be hard,
especially when it comes to financial transactions.
Yes, and they're massive, right? The problem is also, it's not like you're buying an Apple or something. Like you're considering selling 10-15% of your company for a large amount of money to someone. I mean, end to end, it's very hard to do the whole thing. But even like one of the first meetings, I think there's just some personal aversion, so to speak, towards just like talking to an OpenAI LLM model.
Yeah, actually, I had the same discussion with another founder from Denmark, the co-founder of Rebloom. I don't know if you know the company. Yeah, and he mentioned the same, that in the end of the day, you need human interaction. It cannot be 100% AI because we're talking about such large amounts of money.
Yeah,
but a layer of trust needs to be there. So
I agree. I mean, there's actually a few people who are talking about like quant. So like, I mean, quant VC funds, right? In economics, there's a term called physics envy, which basically means that in economics, you're envious of all the physicists because they get to do math and they can model everything, and it's great. And I think sometimes in VCs, there's a little bit of like the quant envy because they look at like Renaissance Capital, they look at Jane Street, Citadel, etc., and it's like, holy moly, I want to make those kind of returns. Just like, can we do that here? And VC to me is just a fundamentally different business. One, as you said earlier, there's a human component to it, right? We have to work together for a long period of time. And I mean, you can't just be on my cap table, I will never see you. That doesn't really work for most people. So it's much more of a human connection that has to be present at some point. And then on top of that, there's some liquidity issues and stuff like that. You can't just like trade in and out of VC investments. So that's why I think VC, to fully pull out like the human element, it is a hard sell.
When you first launched and You said you talked to a few angel investors and you got some capital. Was there any suggestion or motivation? Maybe you should focus on the US and grow the business there and get funding from there, because things are moving way faster there, to be honest.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they're moving sustainable, in my opinion, but it's
Fair.
fast growth. Have you had this type of interactions, and why did you decide to stay in Denmark,
So
apart from it's your home?
Yeah, first of all, that's a good point. I think so it's one of those things like people will say, right? It's like, we're building something for VC. It's like, oh, great. And you try it out in Europe. And then when you're ready to play with the big boys, you go to the US, right? Because it is just bigger. And I fully agree with that. There is a few things that are quite unique, is that VCs, at least from our perspective, like it's very much relationship building, which is also why we started in Denmark and then we moved, because it's easier to start somewhere and then like get a large network. And then, as we said before, like it kind of like spreads out from there, right? So if we go to the US, then you have to basically start from scratch. So instead here, we're able to like start from a much better position and then we grow it. And then once we've taken over Europe, then we can start moving into the US, which is literally what we're doing now. So, I mean, now we've signed a few tier 1 US funds, and then we'll use those and to then kind of like spread it throughout the US. And then we'll make an actual push. But it is a completely fair consideration that, and a different way of going about it is get like 5 funds. Okay, fine. People want to pay for this. Great. Let's go to SF.
Yeah.
It is a completely fair consideration. It comes with a different risk profile as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't align with your strategy going lean and not wanting to take on a VC, because I think if you decide to go to San Francisco, it would be a no-brainer to get a bunch of funding.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and that's if we decided to do VC journey in this space, you could probably do it. There are some kind of like considerations that would have been the way to do it, right? You would have amassed a ton of capital. You basically have moved to either New York or SF, and probably SF. And then you've used that to scale up on engineering, but also to scale up a sales team.
Denmark is growing rapidly when it comes to startups. I mean, I checked some stats, 57 funding rounds, 320 million just in 2025. And actually last week I saw another unicorn in FlatPay.
Yeah, that's true.
So in your opinion, why do you think this growth has erosion? Is it talent? Is it more capital being deployed? Is it maybe some incentives from the government that make the environment better?
I mean, I think there's multiple things. I actually, as a Dane, we can never be good to the Swedes. But in this one instance, I will actually say that I think the Swedes are very much pulling up. I think the Swedes are pulling up the rest of the Nordics. I mean, it is quite interesting to see that. I mean, Sweden has like Klarna, Lovable.
Yeah, it has created a wave.
Also right now, right? I mean, Legora also raised a massive round, right? So I think there is some buoyancy from that. Just kind of like, okay, the Swedes can do it. Danes are not that different right across the little pond. So I think you get some buoyancy from that. I think there's strong universities. There's a strong startup culture right now, at least. And then you could at least argue that it's easier to take risk in Denmark because there's a good social safety net. That probably also leads you to build startup in a lot different way. I mean, in the US, it's very much kind of go for broke, Park Avenue or Park Bench kind of mentality. Whereas in Denmark, it's a little bit slower, but it leads itself to, I think there are more startups because it's just like, it doesn't feel as daunting to jump out in something because you know you're going to have health insurance. You know, in case it goes wrong, like unemployment is low, so I'm going to be able to get another job.
Yeah. It's a healthier lifestyle, not diet of stress.
No, I mean, exactly, right? Which is, so I think that works. And for some people, it works great. I do think that it also does come with drawbacks, right? It is probably one of the reasons why we see fewer truly massive companies in Europe compared to the US. I mean, Stripe, stuff like that, like Cursor, etc.
I've seen that you're big on very clear communication within the work environment. And it is very important to be very specific on what you're communicating. And I was wondering if you can share 1 or 2 examples of what made you embrace this clear communication strategy so much.
Consulting is good for a lot of things. Kind of like the place for wayward children doesn't really know what they want to do with their life. So you can always go into consulting. But one of the things you learn is like clear communication quite early on. And I think it's one of those things everyone benefits from. I would much rather know what's wrong so we can fix it than like kind of like maybe a little bit of this, maybe a little bit of that. And just, it makes for a lot cleaner company culture. And also it's more open and transparent, and everything moves faster, which is also one of the reasons why I would have a hard time working in like a big corporate with like tons of bureaucracy where anything you have to say is like goes up like 8 levels and then down 6 in order to get anywhere, right? I fully understand why it's like that. Massive organizations needs massive hierarchies because otherwise everything just turns into chaos. It can be frustrating. So I think that's just one of the things that we basically embrace from the start. And actually, before we even created the company, we wrote like 10 principles. We agreed on it. We literally signed the document, which is a little bit overkill. And we haven't looked at it since. And one of those was like, we communicate clearly what's wrong. Because then we've seen too many founder breakups, like, which is like the thing that kills most startups, right? And this is one of those things where like, it's just much easier. If there is a problem, just talk about it and fix it.
What is your next big milestone for Evertrace? What is your thing that you're working on now to have done in the next quarter? If you can share it, of course.
One from a commercial side, and then there's probably one for product side. So product side is a little easier. That's what we talked about earlier, kind of like the virtual assistant, right? The main thing there is just kind of like the manual workflow, fully automating that. Hopefully that feature should be done Q1 next year, but that would be massive. From a commercial side, it's probably hitting our goal of 1 million euro ARR. We're not that far off right now. I mean, within 2 years might be a stretch, which should also be quite substantial for 3 guys in a room. But hopefully within the not too distant future, I think that's probably the next milestone.
Okay, great. I want to ask you, people use Evertrace.
Hopefully.
What are some tools or apps you are using that you're a big fan of? Maybe it's for work, maybe it's for your personal life.
So it's quite funny. Our CTO loves Linear. Like, the guy's in love with Linear. And so I started using it as well. It's actually great. It is one of the cleanest interfaces. It's very intuitive. It integrates well with everything else. It's just like there's just no hiccups with it. Because before that is like we have a Kanban board over here and something over here and some third over here, but everything just like integrates very well in like one seamless interface. And then it integrates to GitHub, it's to your cursor, blah, 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 blah. So it's just that. And actually a lot of what we do takes inspiration from how they design things, just because it's so clear and so clean.
That's great. And last question, are there any startups or operators, founders that you would like maybe to spotlight, that they're doing a great job, that you know, that are not getting that much public love? And we have now the opportunity maybe to share with the world. Because there are so many, once I started VentureTales, I started researching, there are so many smaller companies or even bigger companies that no one knows about. And then you read about them and it's fascinating. And that's why I try to give my guests always an opportunity to shout out a few people.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I think there's a few. I mean, obviously, Pay doesn't need anything, right? Because it's massive. It's extremely impressive what they built. But in terms of other Danish startups, I think Kappa AI, they do technical documentations, which is really, they work with some of the very largest names. Really cool to see what they're building. There's a new company called Summary. They just raised from buy founders. Very impressive round. The co-working space where we're sitting, there's another company called Reversio, which is another bootstrap company. And just because we come from those roots, I think there's just like a love in my heart for anything that's bootstrapped. I think it's always quite nice to see that you don't always have to take VC money, although it oftentimes is the right choice. But it's cool to see that you can go multiple ways. They might be VC fund in the future, but at least for now, I think it's quite impressive that they're not like just taking on a massive round.
Thank you very much, Jacob, for joining our VentureTales podcast. It was really a pleasure having this chat, and hopefully we're going to have you in the future once you cross 3 million ARR.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.